This is maybe a very uncomfortable experience, but we'll make it work. So I've had quite a few conversations over the last few weeks, maybe a couple of months, and a lot of my friends seem to be wanting to switch jobs and maybe move on to different things, maybe pivot to go on to different roles, different companies, that sort of stuff. And I've just been thinking about this a lot quite recently, just because I've been very fortunate over the last few years to have been able to dabble in a few opportunities to sort of contour, I guess, my career aspirations in terms of what I would like and what works for me and what doesn't work for me and what I'm okay with and what I'm not okay with and that sort of stuff. And I know not everyone's always in a position where you can choose, right? Like sometimes just having some sort of stable jobs, just having an income is enough. But I want to adopt a bit of a medium-term view for the sake of this video. Just because I think there's a lot to consider when it comes to looking for opportunities. There's whether you want a big or small company, whether you like flexible working, what kind of work-life balance you want, what kind of salary you want, your dependencies, all that sort of stuff. There's a lot that goes into the thought process. And it can get very difficult to sort of determine what it is that you're looking for a lot of the time. Two things that I've always sort of thought about is the sort of, I guess, the industry versus the role. Like some people want to be like really good at like data engineering, and it doesn't matter where they're engineering data, right? It's a skill that they develop, and when they get really good, they can sort of adopt that skill into any industry and, you know, do really well in the role. Whereas, oh, it's a little bird. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's a little bird just moving around. But the second part is the industry. Like whether you want to get really into like healthcare or really into the smart building space or really into like environmental sustainability, carbon management, whatever it might be, whatever your niche is, and picking an industry and sort of developing your career through that is a lot different to developing a certain skill and being able to deliver that skill at a very high value. And I think that's just the first question that always props up in my head whenever people bring up like the next career move, the next job move, because I think that's probably one of the first questions that they need to ask themselves. Like, do they value a certain type of role, or do they value a certain type of industry? And maybe you value both, and you've got to find a sort of a position that fits in between those, between like the Venn diagram, if you had it like in the middle, like something that works on both terms, I guess. Oh, it's a bee. I would say also that, just from my own experience, it is always possible to like pivot prematurely or pivot too soon, because ultimately you don't know until you test the waters whether you'd like a specific industry or whether you'd like a specific job role or specific job title, whatever it might be. Because ultimately the way that the system is sort of developed is that you don't really have much of an opportunity to try a bunch of stuff out before you get to decide. Like I know graduate schemes offer like rotational programs and stuff sometimes, but ultimately you don't get fully engrossed in a specific role or a specific field until you're like years into it. And then when you've already developed yourself years into it, it's like it becomes even more harder to pivot, because now it's like, well, I was just doing this because it was the opportunity that was presented to me, and at the time it seemed like a good opportunity, but now I've decided against it, and now you have to sort of question what I can do to sort of stray away from this and go on to something else that I may enjoy slightly more. And I think that's always a difficult process, because it's a very ambiguous area, and it's a very grey area, because it's not something that was sort of thought about a long time ago, right? Like everyone had their niche. Like, I don't know, Einstein was really good at maths, right? Da Vinci was really good at art. Like everyone who was known for something was known for one thing, and they probably worked on that craft for mostly the entirety of their life. And now we're in a situation where we can sort of upskill quite a bit, like through the internet and stuff. A lot of free content is available, a lot of YouTube tutorials. We can teach ourselves whatever we want. And I think that's probably made the decision-making process slightly more harder as well, because we have an abundance of opportunity now, and an abundance of, I guess, career advances that we could take. And it's always a difficult decision, because you don't always know if the next move that you're making is the best move for you until you're, again, another 1 or 2 years into that role. And because of that, oftentimes it makes us a bit apprehensive to make that shift in the first place, because you don't have a perception of the next thing until you're, I guess, neck deep into it. And then it might be too late. And then trying to shift back would be even more difficult. Trying to shift into a different field altogether may also be even more difficult. And it's something I've thought about quite a lot as well, because you never really know what you're going to be doing 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now. And asking yourself whether you'd be happy to advance in, whether it be the role or the industry that you're doing now, would suffice, it's a difficult question to answer, but I think it's worth asking yourself sometimes. Sometimes it's important just to, I guess, have a job and have some sort of balance. Some people don't really think about it, to be honest. Like, if you made enough money to cover your bases, to live a good life, to live the life that you want, and you get a good work-life balance where you can go about and just do whatever it is that you want to do. Like, sometimes that's enough. Sometimes where people don't really care, like, they don't really ask these questions. Like, a job is a job, right? It's just there to make money, and if it can make money and provide for you in all the ways that you need to be provided for and meet all your wants, then, like, fair enough, to be honest. That's a pretty good deal, and you don't really have to think too much about it. But I guess this is more for those of us who want to sort of begin to think about, you know, if we have to do these jobs for, I guess, the next, I don't know, 40, 50, 60 years. I don't know what the time spans are that people choose to sort of indulge in their careers. But it's not like all of us are gonna eventually, like, start our own side hustle and scale it, and then that will be able to replace our jobs. Sure, that is a nice dream, but I don't think it's, like, the most practical option a lot of the time. Just because scaling a business is quite hard. I don't know, I haven't done one, but I haven't done it yet. But I would imagine, like, it's a big step, and some people just aren't built for that, right? Some people like the routine of a day job, and I think that could be good enough for a lot of people. And yeah, if you have to sort of do this job for like 40, 50 years, I say do a job for 40, 50 years, I think it's worth thinking about, where do you see yourself? Like, what is the ultimate goal? And what would be enough to fulfill your ambition? And again, it's only for those of us that would like to think about it, right? Like, by all means, people who make enough money to live their life, maybe it's just added stress to be able to even begin to think about this, because it raises a lot of other questions that you may not really want to answer. But I also say one thing is that whenever you are, I know there's a lot of things, especially nowadays, with like quiet quitting and stuff, and that kind of makes sense, right? If you're like totally fed up with your job, if you hate it and you just can't bear it any longer, like, I guess I kind of get it. Like, if you've been there for like years and years and years, and you've just had enough, and you are wanting to move on to something else, something better, then I kind of understand that. But for me, it's more like, if you're in this position and the opportunity is there in front of you, right, to make some impact, whether you value that impact or not, it's plain. Whether you value that impact or not, I suppose doesn't really matter. I think what matters is that you are valued within the organization, within the space that you're in, within the team that you're in. And I think that is a nice feeling, to know that people can come to you and, you know, you can provide them for them, you can get them results and that sort of stuff. And that's why I say, like, always work the job that's presented in front of you. Do what needs to be done, get the job done, please the people that you're working with. Because I think only benefits can come from that. Only benefits can come from being in a team where people trust you, being in an organization where people trust you. And I think that can ultimately open doors for you as well, right? Like within an industry, people can move about. Like within a company, if you're in a big enough company, there's opportunities elsewhere. And if you're already well placed, because of all the effort that you've put in, I think pivoting within a company becomes significantly easier. And I think maybe perhaps even in the industry, right? If you become a name, if you build up a name for yourself within a specific industry, and I don't know exactly how this works, but networking has become a big thing of late. So if your ability to network is really good as well, then perhaps that can also propel you to the next position that you want. And that's just something I've always thought about, right? If you're whether you like it or not, you're in this position. You have to do it anyway, so you might as well do it well. You might as well do it as well as you possibly can. And if there comes a day where you can't bear to take this any longer, then at least you've earned the respect and earned the sort of gratitude of the people that were on your team to begin with. But I think ultimately what it comes down to is just developing a bit of a value structure around this, because you have to work. Everyone has to earn money, and finding out what's important to you, whether it's the company or whether it's the scale of the business or whether it's the amount of impact that you think you're making, or whether it's just a salary or just the amount of income you're getting, or whether it's like the people that you work with. There's a lot. I could go on and on and on. But ultimately there's a lot to consider, and it's a difficult thing. And I think gone are the days where people would stay in their company for like 30, 40, 50 years. They would retire with the company, right? Like it's not, people don't do that as often anymore. I think in my like dad's and mum's generation, like that was very often the case, but I don't think we're in a generation where that's as easily upheld as it used to be. And I can understand why, because it is a stressful process, and it does ultimately end up raising a lot of questions about what the next move could be. And sometimes it's just not worth thinking about. Sometimes it can be a bit more stressful. But to those of us who are considering making that leap, I think, like any strategic move, it has to be planned out and take into consideration the medium term. Like, would you be happy to do this for another couple of years, 2-3 years? Because I think without giving it your all, and without giving it at least that span of time, whether it be in a specific role or a specific industry, it's hard to fully engross yourself in it. Honestly, in the first 6 months of any new job, it's pretty much just the warm-up stages, I think. And then after that is when things really start get going. But yeah, I just wanted to sort of lay out some thoughts that I had on this topic, just because it's becoming very prevalent over the last 6 months. And I guess I was developing my own thoughts just because of my own career journey that I've had. And I've been fortunate enough to, again, try a bunch of things. So perhaps to give a different perspective. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.